Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Laverre Constrictors going up against the Opelucid Frontiers, and as these two sides have a look at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tale of the tape where both teams have gotten their season off exactly how they were hoping. The Constrictors currently sitting one spot above the cut line, whereas for the Frontiers in their debut season they're currently sitting just outside the cut line, but it is still early stages here and they have not dropped a series yet and they want to keep it that way. But with all that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Psychic decks? Will it be the Dragon decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting this match off, it is going to be the Ruins of Life deck for the Laverre Constrictors, with their Phantom going into the active spot. For the Opelucid Frontiers, they're using their Vast Pony Canyon deck. They've got the Gibble in the active spot with that Jangmo on the bench here. But here we go, our game one in this 3-game series. With the Constrictors going first, they draw the Oricorio. They've got a Pokeball in hand that they're going to play immediately, and they've also got the Bayonet and the Trevenant as they get their second Phantom. They've also got the big Malasada laying out that Oricorio onto the bench. They do not want to have an empty bench at risk of dropping a game early for that reason. As the Frontiers pull their Professor's Research, they immediately play that, and we can see that they're already generating the water energy, which is great because they've got that Garchomp in hand and they've got a lightning energy being generated on the next turn, whereas for the Jangmo and the Gibble lines, they both require one fighting energy. This deck, the Vast Pony Canyon deck, generating all 3 energies. As it comes back over to the Constrictors after Gibble got that 20 damage onto Phantom, they do get a first energy onto Phantom as well, but it does require 2. Trevenant requires 3, but they can get it online as they've got that second Bayonet in hand. But the Constrictors finish their turn up here as it comes back over to the Frontiers, who do pull their Gabite, but they are not generating those fighting energy, which is what the Gabite needs to get online. It requires 1 water and 1 fighting, as does the Garchomp here, where the Frontiers decide to get a lightning energy onto the Gibble. It's only got a 1 energy retreat cost, but they're continuing with that Gnaw, chipping away at the health of the Phantom at the moment. As it comes back over to the Constrictors, and they've pulled that Necrozma, who does require 4 energy. We've yet to see that come online so far this season, as the Phantom does get its second energy. It can go for this spooky shot, 30 damage here onto the Gibble. They're well aware that there is not a fighting energy being generated on the side of the Frontiers as they pull their second Gabite, and again on their following turn it will be a water energy, and this is the risk for the Opelucid Frontiers. They may not always generate the energies that they need, but they are thinking of playing that rare candy. This will allow them to bypass the Gabite and bring the Garchomp online, and that is exactly what they're going to do. So the Garchomp is online here with a massive 110 health still remaining, but with that Reckless Shearing they can also discard a chosen card from their hand to pull an extra card out of their deck. They do get the leftovers as well onto the Garchomp. They're clearly trying to buy themselves a bit of time. They think of playing the big Malasada, and they've also got the Lily, who can restore 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon with both the Garchomp and the Komaro lines in this Vast Pony Canyon deck. They send it back over to the Constrictors as it does restore 10 health, does the Garchomp from the leftovers. The Professor's Research for the Constrictors, they get their own leftovers, but they also get the Shuppet, and we've seen the havoc that Bayonet can cause on opposing sides as the Trevenant is online. It does get its 3rd energy. This racked down 70 damage, and they're also going to get the leftovers on to the Trevenant, knowing that it's safe for the time being from that Garchomp. It cannot go for the Dragon Claw as it still requires that fighting energy. 70 damage there onto the Dragon Pokemon, as it is 10 health being restored for that Trevenant thanks to the leftovers. The Hawlucha has been pulled for the Frontiers. This is their colorless Pokemon inside this deck, as they could not draft enough Dragon types into their team this season. This is their debut season though in the PokeType League TCG, and they're looking to make a huge impact as the Lily is played, restoring 60 health onto the Garchomp. Hawlucha's brought online. It does get that water energy as well as the Frontiers. They're either thinking of retreating or thinking of going for that Reckless Shearing. They could go for either, and at the moment they are going to discard a lightning energy from the Garchomp to retreat it back to the bench. They bring the Hawlucha into the active spot with that Justified Press. It does 20 damage. It does additional damage to darkness types as well, but they are going for the Reckless Shearing. They get rid of one of those Gabites and they get the Hakamaru out of their deck. And it is immediately brought online, evolving from the Jangmo, but here it is, the Justified Press, 20 damage, just chipping away here at the health of the Trevenant as it comes back over to the Constrictors. They pull their second Shuppet, but their bench is full as the Bayonet has come online. It only requires the 1 energy, so they decide to get the first of 2 required energy onto that second Phantom. They're looking at the Oricorio as well with that Spiteful Dance. It can do additional damage to an opposing Pokemon if the Constrictor's active Pokemon was taken out by damage from the opposing side in the previous turn. It is the Komodo being pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers, and we can see on their next turn they will finally generate a fighting type energy, but will they do it for the Komodo or the Garchomp? They've both got their other required energy, the lightning energy on the Komodo. Those clanging scales, 130 damage, but it also takes an extra 30 damage in the next turn. And they do decide to get a second water energy onto the Garchomp here. Again, going for the Reckless Shearing as well. So it's going to be another Gabite going into the discard pile. And they pull their second Hawlucha. They can fill up the bench here if they so choose, or they can keep that Hawlucha in hand. And that's exactly what they do. Going for another Justified Press onto the Trevenant here. And it is the second Oricorio being pulled for the Constrictors. They don't have to worry about what energy is being generated for them. It's all Psychic type energies all the way down for the Laverre Constrictors and this Ruins of Life deck. They do get that 1 required energy onto the Bayonet here. And they're thinking about how they may want to approach this. They're having a look at their Trevenant. They could go for the Rack Down, 70 damage. It's guaranteed to discard that Hawlucha from the table, but instead they're going for the Bayonet into the active spot with this Nightblind, 30 damage. It still discards the Hawlucha, but with that said, the Constrictors, the Frontiers, they will not be able to put energy onto their active Pokemon. They need to think about who they want to put in the active spot. Do they want the Garchomp? Do they want the Komodo? They're thinking about how they want to approach this. They're going with the Garchomp, so this means that fighting energy cannot go onto the Garchomp here, as the second Gible has been pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers, and they're going with the fighting energy onto the Komodo. That is all they can do here. They can go for another Reckless Shearing if they so choose, and that's exactly what they're going to do. This time going with that second Hawlucha card, going into the discard pile. The second Jangmo has been pulled for this Fast Pony Canyon deck. Immediately, it is on the bench. And they're thinking of doing the exact same here with the Gible, but they decide against that, seeing they've got 4 cards still remaining in their deck, not long until that deck is empty, as they retreat the Garchomp. The Komodo is moved into the active spot, and with the Clanging Scales, Bayonet is wiped off the board, but they need to be careful because now Komodo will take an additional 30 damage in this coming turn. Does have 150 health, but they must be relieved not having to deal with that Bayonet. It can be an absolute menace with trying to get the energies needed onto the active Pokemon. The Constrictors have pulled their Guzma. There are no Pokemon tools on the active Pokemon Komodo, but there is that leftovers on the Garchomp, as it is a first energy, the only required energy for this Oricorio that is in the active spot. With this Spiteful Dance, it's going to do an additional 60 damage due to Bayonet being wiped off the board, but the additional 30 as well due to Komodo being an easy target thanks to those Clanging Scales. It's the second rare candy being pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers. They are generating another water type energy. They get that again onto the Garchomp, but on the next turn it will be a fighting type energy as these Clanging Scales continue, and it's now Oricorio wiped off the board. The Frontiers and this Fast Pony Canyon deck have taken the lead. They need 1 more point to take game 2, but as we always say, all 3 games count, with each win in this 3-game series rewarding aside 2 points towards our leaderboard, as well as counting the points for elimination and the damage done throughout these matchups. It is the Poison Bar being pulled for the Constrictors. They get the second Oricorio into the active spot. They can go for another Spiteful Dance. It will be another 110 damage onto the Komodo, who only has 40 health remaining here, but they've also got the Poison Barb onto Oricorio as it wipes the Komodo off the table. The next point between these two sides will take game 1, as they both won their overall series in round 1, both dropping 1 game but being able to take 2. The second Hakamaru has been pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers. It is the Garchomp in the active spot getting that fighting energy, and they go for the Dragon Claw, as it is the Vast Pony Canyon deck taking game 1. That Poison Barb is activated, but I do not think the Opelucid Frontiers are worried about it now, because they have taken the game 1 win. And as we have our table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action from the PokeType League TCG, as it will be the Constrictors going first thanks to that coin flip with their Thrifty Treats deck. They're going up against the Dragon Majesty deck of the Opelucid Frontiers. It is the Milcery in the active spot for the Constrictors, as the Frontiers are opting to go with the Drampa in the active spot, the Druddigon on the bench. And for this deck, it is the Water, Fire, and Lightning type energies that are generated. All three energies, and again, this is the risk for the Opelucid Frontiers being a multi-energy producing team. It is the Swirlix pulled for the Constrictors. They immediately get that onto the bench, and we can see the two Slurpuffs in hand as it comes over to the Frontiers. They get their second Druddigon, and I'm sure they're wishing there was the Rocky Helmets in play this season, but there are none, as it is the Dragonair and the Rare Candy being pulled for the Frontiers. Thanks to that Professor's research, they get a first of 2 required energy onto the Drampa. Now Drampa, it doesn't matter the 2 energies that are produced onto it for that Dragon Breath. They can be of any typing, as it is the second Milcery, we're going to go with Milcery this season, being put onto the bench for the Constrictors as it was just pulled. They can get the Slurpuff online as they're looking at their Sweets Relay team, this Thrifty Treats deck. They go for the first Sweets Relay with the Milcery, so it's only going to do 10 damage, but the next one it goes for will be able to do an additional 20, as it is the Penny now being pulled for the Frontiers. They're currently generating a Lightning energy, having already produced a Water, and they're going to be able to use the Professor's research from the Thrifty Treats deck. They get an additional 2 cards. They get the Dratini. They get both Dratinis in hand here, immediately getting one of them onto the bench, and they get a second energy onto the Drampa. They need to flip their heads with this to do any damage, plus it will leave the opposing Pokemon paralyzed, but they get the tails, so it does nothing. And even though it would have left the opposing Pokemon paralyzed, Milcery only has 50 health, so it would have been discarded regardless, as the Constrictors pull their Poison Barb, immediately getting that onto the Milcery, trying to discourage the Frontiers from going on the offensive. It is the Slurpuff coming online as it does get its first energy, and the Sweets Relay now is going to do 30 damage, chipping away at this Drampa. The Frontiers do pull their Guzma. They're going to play that immediately. They do not want to have to contend with this Poison Barb, so that is discarded from the active Milcery, as now the Dragonair is going to come online. It is the Shed Skin from promo set A Dragonair that was allowed to be drafted, because whilst we're still in the A series seasons, they can draft from that promo A set. And it is the leftovers being put onto the Drampa here. This will allow it to restore a bit of health, but so does the potion, so 20 health being restored for the Drampa here. And they want to flip the heads. They're going again for this Dragon Breath, and it is the tails again. So once again, Drampa does nothing. They are not getting the coin flips that they need, as those leftovers do produce an extra 10 health for the Drampa chowing down there. The Comfey has been pulled for the Laverre Constrictors, who does have that Flower Shield, and they immediately get it onto the bench as well. So any of their Pokemon that have Psychic Energy attached to them, they cannot be affected by special conditions. And they could retreat this Milcery if they so choose, as the Slurpuff is more powerful. That is exactly what they're going to do, moving the Slurpuff into the active spot. The Sweets Relay normally does 30, but it does an additional 60 if Sweets Relay was done on the previous turn, so 90 damage, wiping that Drampa off the board. And the Laverre Constrictors with this Thrifty Treats deck do take the first point here in Game 2. Now it is the Druddigon being moved into the active spot. It does have that rough skin, so if it takes any damage, it does do 20 recoil damage to the opposing Pokemon, as they do move their second Druddigon into the bench, as does that Dratini taking that final bench spot. The Dragonair getting its second energy. Clearly they are hoping that they can pull a Dragonite and get that Dragonite online, but they still require a Lightning energy for that too, as that benched Milcery once again gets an energy and another 90 damage produced by this Slurpuff, but Druddigon still with 10 health remaining. That rough skin coming into play. They could have actually gotten the 2 required energy for the Druddigon online now, as well as the second Dragonair is pulled. It is brought online, and they are going to get a Water energy onto this benched Druddigon, willing to give up the active Druddigon, knowing that it's only got 10 health remaining. It cannot outlast another turn. Comes back over to the Constrictors, who now pull their Mimikyu, who can go for the Try to Imitate, but their bench is full, so they cannot get that online. They get energy onto the Comfey, and again the Sweets Relay continues from the Slurpuff. Druddigon has been wiped off the board, and the Laverre Constrictors only need one more point to take this series to a Game 3 contender. But as we say, every game still gets played and still counts toward the leaderboard here. It's more so this season than ever before because you get rewarded for each game win in a series. It is the second energy onto that now active Dragon. It has the fire and water energy that's required. It just requires a third energy of any type. As that second benched Milcery gets its one required energy, 90 damage onto this Dragon by the Slowpuff, bringing it down to 10 health, 20 recoil damage though onto the Slowpuff. It comes back over to the Frontiers. They get the Pokeball. There is no Dragonite in sight for this Dragon Majesty deck. However, the Pokeball does allow them to get that second Drampa out of their deck. They get it onto the bench here. They've got the big Melisada in hand. It can restore 10 health for the Dragon, but that will only do so much. As this Dragon Claw, 90 damage, they're able to get a point by taking down the Slowpuff, which is great for the Frontiers. Again, every point counts, as does every bit of damage. But the Constrictors, with an easy target in front of them, move the Milcery into the active spot. They pull a Pokeball, but I do not think that is what they're concerned with. The Sweets Relay, 30 damage. They don't even produce the energy, and they take their third point, taking game 2 over the Opelucid Frontiers, and we are going to a game 3 decider on this series as both teams are looking to take 2 wins and maximize their points as we have our final table reset. And with their final decks now being played, it is the Frontiers going first with their Soaring Storm deck. They have got the Pick-a-Peck in hand, as it is the Constrictors with their Forbidden Light deck going with the Oricorio in the active spot. The Pick-a-Peck up against the Oricorio at the moment, and we can see the Trumbeak and Toucannon already in hand as the second Pick-a-Peck has been pulled for the Frontiers. They're going to play the Pokeball. They've got both Trumbeaks in hand as well, and they get the Giratina, as this deck does produce those Psychic and Grass type energies. It is Giratina being brought online, as is the Pick-a-Peck. They have a quick look at the Trumbeak, who only requires 1 energy as well, but it comes over to the Constrictors. They've got a Professor's Research in hand, as they do pull the leftovers. We can see the Beastite, the Lucamine, and Poison Barb. They get the 2 Morlulls thanks to their Professor's Research, as well as they do have those Shinotics, who do allow them to pull Pokemon cards from their deck. And it is going to be the Poison Barb plus a first energy onto the Oricorio. Can't go for the Dazzle Dance just yet. That does leave the opposing Pokemon confused. It does 40 damage as well, but it does require those 2 energy. The Frontiers pull their own Poison Barb as well, immediately putting it onto their active Pick-a-Peck, and they are going to get the Trumbeak online. They could get both online, and that is exactly what they do. So now it's 2 Trumbeaks coming online on this turn, and with the Glide, 1 energy, 30 damage onto the Oricorio. But this is going to leave the Trumbeak with that poison status condition that will chip away at 10 health. And it is the Lunatone being pulled for this Forbidden Light deck. They can get that onto the bench, but they just get the second energy onto the Oricorio, and they do get the Lunatone onto the bench. They also get the Morlul on the bench, and with this Dazzle Dance, as we said, 40 damage, but it's going to leave the Trumbeak confused. It's already got that poison status condition to contend with, so now it's got both of them, but the Oricorio also on the receiving end of a Poison Barb will have to take that 10 damage in between turns as well. And this Drampa for the Opelucid Frontiers has been pulled. This is the Berserk Drampa, however, who does do additional damage if one of the benched Pokemon on their side has damage already done to it. So they do get it online, and this Soaring Storm deck have now got an empty hand as the Toucannon is online, and with the Beak Blast, 80 damage, the Oricorio is wiped off the board. Now they can leave it with the burn, but I don't think that's what they're concerned with. They're concerned with taking the first point in game 3, and they want to take all 3 points before they even drop one to the Constrictors. Toucannon once again being poisoned. It was cured when it evolved, as does happen in the Pokemon TCG, but it takes it again after giving damage to the Oricorio. It is a Shinotic being pulled for the Constrictors, and with that Illuminate, they're able to pull another Pokemon card from their deck. They get the Lunatone, that second Lunatone in hand, as they're going to start generating energy for the benched Lunatone here. They're not going to try and set up this Shinotic in case it ends up with that burn. That Beak Blast does 80 damage. It is the Ilima who is pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers, who I think I now know how to say their name, but with the Beak Blast, 80 damage, they could get that burn onto the Shinotic. That's exactly what they're hoping for, because the burns do 20 damage. But they flip the tails, which is great for the Constrictors. This will buy them a little bit of time. It is the Guzma that are being pulled for the Constrictors. They can cause that Poison Barb to get discarded, but before they even worry about doing that, they go with another Illuminate. Now they've got the Dawn Wings Necrozma in hand with that Psycho Bill. It does 100 damage, but it also does 30 damage to itself. And as it is a an Ultra Beast, sorry, it can have that Beastite attached. With the Beastite, it does allow them to do an additional 10 damage for each point they've taken, and they've played the Lusamine, so they get 2 energy from the discard pile put onto Necrozma as well, and they can get a 3rd energy onto it here. That's exactly what they do. They are setting up, trying to get ready to go. Again, 100 damage it is capable of. And that poisoning still afflicting that active Toucannon. The Frontiers producing grass energy at the moment on this turn and the coming turn. They have got that 2nd energy onto the Dramper. They're going to retreat the Toucannon here. They're going to give up the 2 energy that are on it, but it will be cured of that poisoning. Although they're taking a second look here, they may not do that. They're taking their time, thinking of their options here. They can retreat it. Now, they could have retreated it into the Trumbeak if they wanted, and now that is actually what they're going to do, but Trumbeak didn't have the energy put onto it. It was the Dramper. If they put the energy onto the Trumbeak, it could have wiped this Shiinotic off the board. This actually buys the Constrictors a bit of time. They've just pulled their 2nd Necrozma here. And they're going for another Illuminate. They're trying to empty this deck as quickly as possible. They get the 2nd Oricori. Now, they can't get these Pokemon online, but they are going to get a 1st energy onto that benched Morlul, and they're going through their hand thinking about how they may want to approach this in the coming turns. They're still yet to take a point. The Frontiers with the Saurian Storm deck have only taken 1. They've pulled the Rayquaza, but their bench is full as well, and the Trumbeak now gets its 1st energy. It can go for this Glide, and it does wipe that Shiinotic off the board. The Frontiers are 1 point away from taking their 2nd series here in the PokeType League TCG. And it is the Necrozma moved into the active spot with that 100 base attack power. It is the 2nd Shiinotic that has been pulled. They can go for more Illuminates now. Their deck may actually be empty of Pokemon cards though, and it is, so there are no cards that will be pulled now. But with that Psych ability, it can do 100 damage, wiping this Trumbeak off the board. It's only the Giratina that can actually outlast the Psych ability from the Necrozma. And they get it a 2nd energy onto the Shiinotic, and then they move the Necrozma onto the bench as well. They could have started setting that up already. They're thinking about how they want to approach this. They're going with the leftovers here onto the Necrozma, not trying to get it ready with the Beastite, because if it was able to get powered up, it would have been able to take out that Giratina in one go, but it does take that 30 recoil damage, which is great for the Frontiers. Having Necrozma do damage to itself, they do move the Dramper into the active spot. This Berserk does 20 damage, but it does an additional amount of damage that I can't quite read at the moment when it goes for the Necrozma here, as that Toucannon has already taken damage, and there's the 2nd Toucannon plus the Rare Candy being pulled for the Frontiers. Thanks to the Professor's research, it's an additional 50 damage, so it can only do 70 damage to the Necrozma. Not enough to wipe it off the board, but enough to make it do enough recoil damage to take itself out of this match. And it is the Mallow now being pulled for the Constrictors. It can heal a Shiinotic back to full strength, but they do have to discard the energy out. However, that Shiinotic is still at full strength. This Psycho ability, if they do go for this, they will lose the game, but they will maximize their own damage, trying to not let the Frontiers do any damage to them. The Constrictors really need to think about how they want to approach this. They do get an energy there onto the bench Necrozma. They can retreat this active Necrozma. It is a 2 energy retreat cost though. They're looking through their hand, trying to weigh up their options. They are going to retreat the Necrozma. They move the Shiinotic into the active spot. They go with the Gentle Slap, so they're going to start chipping away here at this Dramper. And it is the big Malasada being pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers. Again, they're generating a grass energy on the next turn. It will be a psychic type energy. And Giratina does require 1 of each plus a 3rd energy of any type. So they're going through their hand. They're having a look at the Toucannon. It can do 80 damage. It's not enough to take out the Shiinotic, but if they get the burn onto it, the burn would be enough, but they get an energy onto the Giratina instead. Continuing with the Berserk, 70 damage here onto the Shiinotic, that guaranteed damage. And it comes back over to the Constrictors. They get a big Malasada. They get a 2nd energy onto their full strength Necrozma at the moment. And they can play the Mallow, but that will cause them to have to discard the energy that's on the Shiinotic, so instead they're going to retreat it first, so those energies are already discarded. They can still play the Mallow if they so choose. And that is exactly what the Constrictors do here, so that Shiinotic is restored back to full strength. They can't use the Illuminate. All the Pokemon cards have been pulled from this deck. They do get a Beastite though onto the Necrozma, so it can do an additional 10 damage because that's how many points they've taken. So again, it's an additional 10 for each point. As the second Giratina has been pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers, it's a second energy onto that benched Giratina here. Another Berserk, another 70 damage onto this Necrozma this time. And it will have 40 health remaining. As it comes back over to the Constrictors, they pull their second Mallow. They can't really use that right now because Shonok is at full strength. They do get a third energy though onto this active Necrozma. The Psycho Billy, 110 damage. It will wipe the Drampa off the board, but it takes 30 damage due to that Psycho Billy recoil. They need one more point, but the Frontiers have set up Giratina with 2 energy. And with those 2 energy, they move it into the active spot. They pull their second Rayquaza. They get the third energy required for this Crisis Dive, 120 damage. They do have to discard 2 random energy, but they don't care because they've just taken their third point and taken game 3 with this Saurian Storm deck over the Laverre Constrictors, as the Frontiers are having a great debut season so far, as they've jumped all the way up into 3rd place, but next round they're going up against the Holland Allies, whereas for the Constrictors, they're in 5th place. Next round going up against the top of the leaderboard, Olivine Raiders. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.